The church was filled with flowers, soft music, and whispers of excitement. But in a single moment, everything fell apart. The bride stood frozen at the altar, her white dress trembling as the heavy wooden doors of the church slammed shut behind the man who had just abandoned her. The groom, her groom, had walked out without a single word, leaving behind hundreds of shocked guests, a broken promise, and a woman whose entire world had collapsed in front of everyone she loved. For a long, painful moment, no one moved, no one spoke. It felt like time itself had stopped inside that small church in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And then something even more unbelievable happened. The groom's brother slowly stood up. Before we continue this emotional story, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. The bride's name was Rachel Harper. She had spent months planning the most beautiful day of her life. Every flower, every candle, every seat had been carefully arranged with hope and love. She believed she was about to start a future with Michael Carter, the man she thought would stand beside her forever. But Michael had other plans. Just minutes before the vows, he had leaned toward his brother and whispered something no one else heard. Then he stood up, walked to the altar, looked once at Rachel, and walked away. He didn't run. He didn't apologize. He simply left. Guests murmured in confusion. Rachel's parents sat frozen in their seats, unable to process what had just happened. Rachel herself stood at the altar, clutching her bouquet so tightly that the stems bent in her hands. Her eyes searched the room as if someone would explain this nightmare. But the truth was painfully simple. She had been abandoned. Among the stunned crowd sat a man named Aaron Carter, Michael's older brother. Aaron was a quiet, reserved man in his mid-30s who rarely drew attention to himself. Unlike his charismatic younger brother, Aaron preferred a quiet life raising his 6-year-old daughter, Chloe. Aaron had been a single father since his wife passed away 3 years earlier. Life had not been easy. Between working long hours at a small construction company and raising Chloe alone, his days were filled with responsibility and exhaustion. But Aaron had always admired Rachel from afar, not in the way his brother had loved her, but in the way someone respects another person's kindness. Rachel volunteered at the community center, helped elderly neighbors, and always greeted people with a warm smile. She was the kind of person who made the world feel a little softer, and now she stood alone in front of everyone, humiliated, broken. Aaron looked around the church. Guests were whispering. Some were already reaching for their coats. Others were staring at Rachel with uncomfortable pity. His heart tightened. He looked at Chloe sitting beside him. The little girl held a small basket of flower petals she never got to throw. Her innocent eyes were wide with confusion. In that moment, Aaron felt something powerful rise inside him. Not pity, not impulse, but courage. Slowly he stood. The quiet creak of the wooden pew echoed across the silent church. People turned their heads as Aaron stepped into the aisle. He wasn't sure what he was about to do. All he knew was that Rachel didn't deserve to stand there alone. Step by step, Aaron walked toward the altar. Rachel noticed him approaching, her eyes red with tears. For a moment she probably assumed he was coming to apologize for his brother, but Aaron stopped in front of her and looked directly into her eyes. There was no dramatic speech, no grand performance, just honesty. He gently told her something that no one else in that church had the courage to say, that what had happened to her was cruel, and she deserved someone who would never walk away from her. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. Rachel stared at him, stunned. Aaron then admitted something that surprised even himself. He said he didn't know what the future looked like. He said he wasn't rich, wasn't perfect, and wasn't nearly as charming as his brother. But he promised one thing. He would never leave someone standing alone at the altar. The room was silent. Some guests gasped. Others leaned forward, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Rachel's hands trembled as she listened. Her heart had just been shattered, and yet in the middle of that heartbreak stood someone offering her dignity instead of pity. For several seconds she said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. Rachel laughed softly through her tears. Not a laugh of joy, but of disbelief. Her entire wedding day had turned into chaos, yet somehow this quiet man was standing before her offering something real. She looked out at the crowd. Some guests nodded encouragingly. Others were wiping their eyes. Even the pastor looked stunned but hopeful. Rachel took a deep breath, and for the first time since Michael walked out, the weight on her chest began to ease, because Aaron hadn't tried to replace his brother. He had simply chosen kindness. The ceremony didn't continue that day. It would have been too overwhelming for everyone involved. Instead, the guests slowly gathered around Rachel, offering hugs and support. Aaron didn't push anything further. He simply walked Rachel down from the altar so she didn't have to face the room alone. That simple act became the beginning of something none of them expected. Over the next few weeks, Aaron and Rachel spoke often. At first, their conversations were careful and quiet. Rachel needed time to heal, and Aaron understood that better than anyone. He had lived through loss himself. Sometimes they met at the park where Chloe liked to play. Rachel quickly bonded with the little girl, helping her feed ducks and pushing her on the swings. Watching them together warmed Aaron's heart in a way he hadn't felt in years. Rachel wasn't trying to replace Chloe's mother. She simply cared. Months passed. The gossip around town slowly faded, replaced by something far more beautiful, the quiet story of two people who found hope in the middle of heartbreak. Aaron never pressured Rachel. He never rushed her. He simply showed up, consistently, kindly. And one autumn evening, nearly a year after the disastrous wedding, Aaron invited Rachel and Chloe to the same church where everything had once fallen apart. Rachel was nervous walking through those doors again, but this time, the church felt different, peaceful. Aaron stood in the aisle holding Chloe's small hand. He didn't give a long speech. That wasn't who he was. Instead, he simply asked Rachel if she would be willing to build a life with him, not because of what had happened before, but because of everything they had discovered since. Rachel's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different tears, hopeful ones. She said yes. The wedding that followed was small, warm, and deeply meaningful. There were fewer decorations, fewer guests, and no grand expectations. But there was something far more important. Love built on patience, trust built on kindness, and a little girl throwing flower petals with the biggest smile anyone had ever seen. If this story touched your heart, take a moment right now to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that remind us humanity still has goodness. And before the story ends, here's a special request. Comment the word kindness below if you believe one brave act can change someone's entire life, because sometimes the person who saves us isn't the one we plan to marry. Sometimes it's the quiet soul who simply refuses to let us stand alone. And for Rachel Harper, the man who stood up when everyone else stayed silent didn't just rescue a broken